What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Magic Dads podcast. My name is Blake. I'm here with Stefan.
Hello. What are we talking about today, Blake?
Oh, one pointed cards. But before we get into that, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Make sure you turn notifications on so that we get to annoy you every time we upload a video. That's free. If you would like to help the channel out monetarily, there is a link to our Patreon campaign down in the description of this video. You can head over there and check out all of our extra content. And with that out of the way, let's talk about the one-pointed cards. So this is part 3 of 4 about the one-pointed cards. And what we're kind of doing here is just going through the one-pointed cards, talking about them a little bit, and then giving our opinion on whether or not they deserve their point.
An independent opinion.
An independent opinion. Our opinions are our own.
Correct.
Have we? I don't think we've disagreed on any of these yet.
Not so far.
I have a feeling that we're going to disagree on one of these tonight.
I also have a feeling. What's up first?
So we ended with Merchant Scroll in the last episode, which means that today the first one we are going to talk about is Mystical Tutor.
Mystical Tutor.
So Mystical Tutor, if you recall, we had a discussion about, what is that other one called? Imperial Seal.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of the same kind of context can be applied to Mystical Tutor that applied to that, in such that it is a card negative tutor. So you are spending a card to go find a card, but it doesn't go to your hand. It goes on top of your deck, which means you lose a card in the process.
Yes.
The difference between this and Mystical Tutor, this and Imperial Seal, is that Mystical Tutor is an instant speed card. So there's a lot of really fun stuff that you can do with a Mystical Tutor. For example, you can go put a Terminus on top of your deck, and then when you draw your card on your turn, you get to reveal Terminus and cast it for its miracle cost. That's fun.
It also, so Mystical Tutor also does have a limit. So
it does
only find instants and sorceries.
Yes.
But yeah, it's blue, so you know, blue's gonna find instants and sorceries.
Right. The world
if you're
is
finding something else.
The world is your onion.
Yeah. It's so there's a limit there, right? And it is face up. Your opponent gets to see what you're gonna do.
Yes.
So if you're not casting that card right away, oftentimes you leave yourself open to stuff like Cabal Therapy.
Right. If you're just getting that card so that you're setting yourself up so it's in your hand for when you want it, your opponent can now do any number of things to your hand in between the time that you draw that card and when you decide to cast it.
Yeah. Yeah. Blue doesn't care as much about card advantage as other colors.
Because they have efficient ways to get card advantage.
Yeah. If you're doing it right, you are hopefully beating your opponent in card advantage if you are playing blue.
In Canadian Highlander specifically, I see Merchant Scroll get cast to find Ancestral Recall a lot.
Mystical Tutor.
Sorry, Mystical Tutor
Also
to find Ancestral Recall a lot.
Yes. It's not my preferred way, but yeah, it gets a lot of. It is a pointed card that gets a lot of pointed cards.
Yep.
There's a lot of instants and sorceries, notably, that are pointed.
Yep.
And I have seen people cast Mystical Tutor for Demonic Tutor to Demonic Tutor for the thing that they need if it's not an instant.
It seems so inefficient.
It's not mana efficient, that's for sure, and it's like obviously not card efficient, but sometimes you just need to do it. Like if you're going to win the game, sometimes you got to pay the cost to be the boss. And this sort of like highlights the fact that a lot of the best cards in the format, or at least a lot of the pointed cards in the format, are instants and sorceries.
Yes, it does. And I think that's, Mystical Tutor was on the most recent points change. It was 2 points for a very long time, and it has been reduced to 1 singular point.
Yes.
Also, in that points change, all of the decisions were unanimous except for this one.
Yeah, there was a single dissenting opinion.
Yeah, there was a single dissenting opinion, which means that one person did not want this to go to 1 point.
Correct. They wanted it to stay at 2. Which is sort of understandable given like what strategies abuse this card. And especially if you are a person who has recently died to it or plays it a lot and understands some of the power of it.
Yep.
Your opinion can be swayed.
Yeah, absolutely.
that being said, it is the sole. So like Vamp notwithstanding, it is the soul of the original like top of deck tutor cycles that remains pointed.
Yep. Worldly Tutor not pointed, Enlightened Tutor not pointed.
They were pointed at one point.
They were,
at
yes.
one point they were pointed, yeah, and they are not now.
Yep.
So Mystical is the last that remains of those.
Yep.
So that being said, should we do it?
Yeah.
Should we do it? So we're gonna give her thumbs up. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I sort of figured this is where we were gonna come at.
I do not think that Mystical Tutor needs to be pointed.
Interesting. Like you're thinking it just needs to come off entirely.
I think that the card is actively bad, and if you put that card in your deck, you should probably put something else in your deck.
Because
it doesn't deserve its point. Your point is better spent on something else, like Tainted Pact, for example.
I think the minute that the minute that it no longer could find Ancestral Recall or Time Walk, and also be able to be pitched to Force of Will, and be able to find Gifts of Given, and be able to find Intuition, and be able to find any of the other tutors, that's the point at which I would be comfortable with it being 0 points. It is such a powerful enabler to me that it being at 1 point in perpetuity is acceptable.
So if this card was no points, I would consider playing it in some decks. Decks. But the fact that you have to spend a point to play this very bad card makes me not ever want to put it in a deck ever.
When you say bad, I feel like it needs to have the right home, and then in that home it's disgusting. Again, you're like, we talked about how like Demonic Tutor is 4 points because we don't want people to have 2 copies of 7-point cards, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The issue is that this is the second copy of almost every 7, like of the majority, at least 2 of the best 7-pointed cards in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you just get it for a single point.
Mm-hmm. Not good.
And you also get to get Intuition. Like there is no amount of times that I won't put this in a deck if my kill is instant and sorcery based. Like in Scape Shift, this. In a gifts package, this. I'm so up on the card.
Feels bad, man.
Again, if you're tutoring a card to hold it in hand for later, like if you're tutoring a counter spell, forget it. That's stupid. And I don't think that this, if all you were getting with this card is like Terminus or, Bonfire of the Damned, then it's 0 points. But as long as you can get those pointed cards with this, like the plethora of pointed cards with this card.
So you're going to Mystical Tutor for Demonic Tutor so that you can search for another card. And in the process of doing this, you're either dead to attackers, or your opponent has lined up some way to interact with you, or you don't have enough mana to do everything.
No, I just win the game.
It's unlikely.
I'm playing a blue deck, so I have control elements. I've been able to hold things off, and now I get to win with the card that I draw.
And then you're spending your control elements to try to keep your opponent from killing you. But at the same time, you don't have enough control elements to protect your own win conditions.
It's a single point. It's a single point in your deck. Would you prefer I played in like Dig Through Time?
10 out of 10 would play a Dig Through Time before I played a Mystical Tutor.
Absolutely not.
10 out of 10, and I would not play a Dig Through Time. So that tells you how high I am on Mystical Tutor.
No, Mystical Tutor, very good card.
Okay,
right, this is your first disagreement. I love that.
The next card on the list is Price of Progress.
This is a card that has killed both of us, I think.
So, let me think. I don't know. I've definitely died to a Price of Progress in Legacy. Like
I've died
like many times. I don't know if a Price of Progress has ever killed me in Canadian Highlander.
I've killed myself with one.
But the game is a draw.
Yeah, Josh bolted me in response. Yeah, it was a draw. We both died at the exact same moment.
That's amazing. So, Price of Progress, the only red card on the points list.
Breach.
Oh, Underworld Breach is on there too.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
it was. So red didn't have a single pointed card for a very long time. And then then Breach obviously is sort of a messed up Yogswill. And this is sort of the only point, I'm not going to say required, but it's the card that sort of like slots so easily into red aggro decks that basically if you're in a red aggro deck, like a predominantly red aggro deck where you're not going to play a lot of dual lands, you're starting with 9 points because this card just gets slammed in.
Yep.
Like to the point where like it doesn't. I think I talked to Ryan about it, and he's like, I would play this card at 3 points because it wins him so many games.
Yeah. Yeah, and that it most certainly does. It's not unusual for a Price of Progress to deal 6, 8, 10 damage.
You know what could find that is Mystic Tutor.
And it's it could. You're right. And then like the longer the game goes on, the more powerful this card becomes.
Oh, it becomes incredibly lethal. Like you literally watch yourself. I think you and I have had games that we've commentated where we watch a player's life total and their lands, like their non-basic lands,
yeah,
and there's like this slow overlap of like their life comes down and their number of non-basics go up.
Right, and now we're in Price of Progress range.
Yes, we're like all they got to do is talk. I think, and I've seen like Ben Wheeler in the finals of this last the 2022 championship. He was on mono red.
Yes,
and like there were points at which he's just like. Price of Progress. They're dead.
Just need a Price of Progress. Yeah, one time. Lucky one time.
It's dirt cheap mana wise. It goes in decks where you're playing just basic lands, and it incentivizes playing basic lands. And it's a phenomenal card. It's super well designed.
It's weird how it's like almost a tax effect that's stapled onto a sorcery. It is such a unique design in that regard. A lot of the ways that the red decks can tax your mana base are with things like Ankh of Mishra, where it's a permanent that's in play, and you get to see it and play around it. But with Price of Progress, like they could draw it off the top of their deck at any point in time, and all of your choices that you have made for the game up until this point have mattered, and you didn't even know it.
That's actually a great point. Yeah, like if you're a Canlander player, like a seasoned Canlander player, you always have it in your mind.
Yes.
And some
I know which players have it in their deck, and well, I guess we play face up points anyway. So if it's in your deck, we would know anyway. But something that I keep remembering is there was this one game where I played against Ryan. This was probably a month or so ago. I'm playing 5-color, and he just kept scathing, and he was like, "You are flawlessly playing against Price of Progress right now," and because my deck was just letting me, I had fetch lanes that were the right colors so that I could fetch basics and not be hindering my game plan moving forward. And it turns out it didn't matter because he didn't even have the Price of Progress in his hand. But then there are other games where your deck just does not allow you to do that.
No,
you need green-white mana on turn 1 or turn 2, and your only fetch land is an Arid Mesa. So you're forced to go get a non-basic land.
Yep.
And there's just nothing that you can do about that.
Yeah, and that fetch is going to deal you damage on top of that. So it's like doing double duty, right? Like you're taking the point of damage. And so like it's doing both of the things where like so the natural state of the game where everybody's playing is like it's always going like that.
Right. And it's like so similarly, you can play this game of Magic and then get really hosed by a Blood Moon. Your opponent plays a Blood Moon, and you're like, oh, well, I can't play Magic anymore. Price of Progress actually just kills you.
Yes. It just ends the game immediately, which actually preferable in a lot of cases.
100%. I would rather die to a Price of Progress because I have a greedy mana base than have to play 10 turns underneath a Blood Moon.
Oh my god. All right, so
Does Price of Progress deserve its point?
3, 2, 1. Oh, we agreed on this one. Interesting.
We were just having this discussion, and you were super pro. Let it have its point. What changed your mind?
I think. All right, so I'm torn. You're catching me at a point at which like I am okay with it being a point, but I go back and forth.
Okay.
I like it at one point. I do like it at one point. I think that it almost needs to be free because of how greedy mana bases have gotten.
Yes. First of all, yes. But also, I think that it's really silly to point this singular 2-mana thing that can deal a bunch of damage when there are so many 2-mana things that can deal a whole bunch of damage. Take, for example, Murktide Regent. Granted, there is a difference here in that Murktide Regent doesn't kill them the turn that you played it, but rather the turn after that. But come on.
Yeah, sort of lines up in the same way. But Murktide is proactive in a very specific way. Like it's just a beater.
Yes.
But
these two things do not equal one another. I'm just saying this is a prime example of a 2-mana thing that can deal a whole lot of damage.
I think if you really wanted to, I sort of brought it up earlier that like every red deck, or at least every like red X deck, two color red deck or less, slams this card without thinking. Starts with 9 points.
Mm-hmm.
That's silly.
Yeah.
The card either needs to be 3 points, like 2 or 3 points, or none at all.
Mm.
And you need to decide whether or not you want to go hard at multicolor land bases, at multicolor mana bases, or just allow them to flourish.
Yeah. So there's this weird dyad when you start talking about it that way, or like what I said with it about it as being this weird taxing effect that you don't even see coming, in that is it pointed because it's abusive towards multicolored mana bases, or is it pointed because it has a propensity to end the game? Because if it's pointed because it's abusive towards multicolored mana bases, that's very silly, because there are a million cards that are pointed for that exact reason.
Yeah.
Or sorry, a million cards that are not pointed for that reason.
Can I tell you the reason I think it is pointed?
Or is it pointed because it does a whole bunch of damage? Because again, there are a bunch of cards that do that are not pointed. Yes, please tell me the reason that it's pointed.
I don't think it's either of those.
Okay.
I think that the rules committee, and this is sort of like, I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth, but I just want to say, I want to say this. I believe that it is a point so that red decks can't play Lotus Mox in the same list. And this is their step, their little trip, because
come on, man.
Because the red, hang on, listen.
Just let them play Lotus Mox. Come on, man.
Right. So I believe that this was the logic in their minds: is red decks get to free roll Lotus Mox, like mono red decks get to free roll Lotus Mox, and don't have any other cards that they really care about, because they can play 0 points. If that's
yes, they can play 0 points. And if that's the point, then I mean, just play Lotus Mox. You don't even need Price of Progress.
That's sort of what I'm getting at. It's like decks that could really benefit from Lotus Mox going back and forth on like, oh, well, you know, I'm playing like Strip Mine and like these points and this point, and like, you know, of course I'm playing the Price of Progress because that's like the coolest card. That's a point. So like it really like it basically throws like a pebble into the gears of this machine, and like one of 2 cogs come off and they're like, oh no, I can't. But at the end of the day, I think that a lot of these lists would be way better served just playing Black Lotus. Like play Black Lotus.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree with you.
So yeah, you either need to point it with intent, which is 2 points, or you need to not point it at all, which is 0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so right. If the card is so cracked that it needs to be pointed, why not give it a little bit of credit, some more points?
Yeah,
that's really interesting. I've never thought about that before. Which there are other decks that get to play Lotus Mox, like mono green,
mono black,
like mono black.
Yeah,
and like they could play a Tainted Pact.
Yeah, no, but they don't. Because they get to play Lotus Mox.
Right.
Lotus is the
Okay,
messed up card.
so the next card on the list is a Survival of the Fittest. Why don't you go off about this one, King? Because I know you love this card.
So this is a very pointed. This card is very special to me specifically because I grew up playing Tempest. It was the first standard set that I played, and this card specifically was the first standard deck that I played that I actually had success with, which was the Rexer deck, which was like my first experience of like I can build these deep synergies inside of my deck. And I owned the gold bordered like championship Champo deck of this deck, and I adored it. I still have one of the gold bordered Survival of the Fittest.
That's amazing.
From when I was a little kid.
Oh, it's amazing.
And I recently bought like a black bordered version like a couple of years ago because my wife, who was wonderful, was like, this card means a lot to you, just go do it. And and so I ended up getting a copy, like I traded in some stuff and I got a copy of Survival and Recurring Nightmare at the same time.
Yes.
And I adore these cards completely. There is
so if you are a person out there that grew up in the same era and you like Survival of the Fittest and Recurring Nightmare, you should play Canadian Highlander because you can play both of those cards in Canadian Highlander. Yes, you can.
And they're good. Recurring Nightmare is 0 points.
It sure is.
So Survival was recently dropped from 2 to 1. It was
again,
2 for
yes,
a very long time.
Yes, changed in the same points change that Mystical Tutor got changed in. It went down from 2 to 1.
Yeah, this was a nod to trying to, I think, beef up some of the creature based
because there is just fury and pyrokinesis everywhere right now, and decks like Sandy B are suffering for it,
which is fine. Like there's seasons for these things.
Absolutely.
So the card doesn't really, it has 2 modes, and mode 1 is where you have a toolbox of creatures that you get to basically pitch whatever is in your hand to find the toolbox for the right card for the right moment.
Yep.
The other mode is the total degen, pitch, find your recursion engine, and then just start ripping cards out of your graveyard over and over. And
combo off.
Yeah. In either case, the card costs mana to play, 2 mana to play, and it costs a green mana to activate every time. And that's the limiting factor.
Yep.
Especially, so we talked about how Fury sort of like limits the amount of green mana that you can produce because it's sort of hostile to 1 toughness creatures right now.
Yes.
Almost every creature that makes mana has 1 toughness, especially the ones that make green mana.
Yeah.
And it's sort of been, it's hard out there for an elf.
Yeah, most definitely. So I also have a Recurring Nightmare Survival of the Fittest deck, but mine goes and gets an Atraxa, and then you discard the Atraxa, and then you go get a Loyal Retainers, and then you cast the Loyal Retainers and reanimate the Atraxa. So it also has lines with like Chaos Defiler and Recurring Nightmare, but it's sort of like a grindy mid-rangey reanimator-ish kind of thing. But another cost is that you have to have a creature in hand to make it work. You have to discard a creature. And so Cranky, who was playing F&M a few weeks ago, had a Survival in his Cradlehoof deck. And his list was from before the points changed, so he was only playing 9 points. And we were talking about the point spread a little bit, and he said the Survival is just kind of awkward because he plays all of his creatures to the board, and then you draw a Survival off at the top. You don't have a creature in your hand, doesn't do anything.
Yeah. It's if you're playing the board and you don't have a card that you're holding, or like especially if you don't have a card that's like a higher CMC, like a lot of those elf decks are like your curve is basically 1/1/1/1/1/1/1/1/1/1/6.
Yes.
There's very little reason to, like, you could activate it a ton in 1 turn, but
on if your deck is nice to you, but you don't want to hold that creature in your hand hoping that you draw the Survival so that you can discard the creature. Like that's you're just handicapping yourself.
it requires you play in a certain way and build in a certain way to really gain all of the benefit out of the card. That being said, it is a repeatable tutor.
Yeah.
It is a repeatable tutor to hand.
Yeah, and it puts cards into your graveyard at the same time,
which is the best place to put them.
Heck yeah, buddy. So does Survival of the Fittest deserve its points?
3, 2, 1.
Yeah. I'm really happy that it went down to 1. I appreciate that nod. But I absolutely think Survival of the Fittest deserves its points.
Yes. To the point where, I'm still running 9 points in my list that had it.
Mm-hmm.
I would still play it at 2 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
A 1-pointed Survival of the Fittest is somebody blowing me a kiss and telling me that I'm beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a gift to me. And I don't know how good that gift is, but I'm going to accept it. It mostly just lets me play Vamp in my Dredge deck.
Yeah, I mean, I also haven't went back and revisited that 5-color list since Survival went down to 1. I mean, I'm also playing 9 points in that list right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so funny that we're talking about 1-pointed cards and like what's good and what's not, when a lot of decks are running 9 points right now and are just choosing to not play any of the one-pointed
cards. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of them are very specific. Like, you need to build your deck in a certain way, and if your deck isn't built that way, then you can't really apply that 1-pointed card.
Yeah, I agree.
The next card that we're going to talk about is not that.
No. This is
This is one of my favorite 1-pointed cards. Yes, it is. Yes. It is Tainted Pact.
What is this, from Odyssey?
So the original Tainted Pact. Mm-hmm. I can see the art in my head, but I'm not sure what set it was in.
It's got the Mirari in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, that would be Odyssey then.
Yeah, it has rad art on it. And
yes,
so, like the guy with, is he wearing earmuffs?
So, Tainted Pact is one of my favorite cards, and it is not because of Thassa's Oracle. So, ever since Lelia the Blade Reforged got printed last year, which is a card that I've been obsessed with for quite some time, it has been my dream to attack with a Lelia the Blade Reforged, have my opponent declare no blockers, and then put a Tainted Pact on the stack. Because Lelia counts iterations. Mm-hmm. So you exile a card with Tainted Pact, you say no, then you exile another one. She gets another trigger.
Yeah.
So it's a Splinter Twin. They just die.
Yes.
And I have not got to do this yet, and I want to do it really bad.
It is effectively an instant speed kill because Lelia has haste.
Yeah.
And this card is an instant.
Yes.
And so like the modes of what the card actually does is almost less important of the side benefit of it, which is exiling your graveyard or exiling your library.
Exiling your library. So it's also just a demonic tutor. And the only restriction that you have in being able to do this is that you can't run 2 of the same card name, which, hello, welcome to Canadian Highlander.
Well, that does include basic lands.
It does include basic lands. Hello, welcome to Canadian Highlander.
Yeah. Notably, you can play a basic with a snow-covered basic.
Yes, that's what I do.
Yeah.
And it still lets you, in a 3-color deck, it still lets you play 5 or 6 basic lands.
Yes. You sort of have to play this in 3+ color decks, though. Because like
it gets weird. It gets hard to build a mana base in a 2-color deck without having repeat basic lands.
Not great. It's
hard
stuff.
It's hard. That's for sure.
Yeah. Running 4 basics in a 2-color deck
That being said, like I said, it is literally just demonic tutor.
Yeah.
You can find any card that you want in your deck. Doesn't even matter.
As long as you don't care about, like, there's no specific combos that require cards be in your library.
Yeah.
You're generally fine. Like the Thassa's Oracle decks, Thassa's Oracle is effectively an 8-pointed card because of this card. Yeah. Because you have to run them together. Mm-hmm. They're so efficient.
Yep.
And again, it's like an instant speed thing where, like,
yes, it is. It is an instant speed card, which is also absurd to me. Demonic tutor, but it's an instant. So, does Tainted Pact deserve its point?
3, 2, 1, go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tainted Pact most definitely deserves its point, and I would argue that Tainted Pact deserves a few more points.
Yeah, you're sort of on the 3-point.
I think that Tainted Pact is a 3-point card. Yes. Prime example of why I think this is your Thassa's Oracle deck. Should you really just get to be able to play another pointed card in there? I mean,
yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, Seeker Walk doesn't get additional points.
Those Seeker and Walk.
Those cards are pointed because they go together.
Yeah, and
Tainted Pact and Thassa's Oracle is way more efficient than that.
I would argue, though, I would prefer Oracle go to 8 and this card go to 2 instead of 7 and 3.
Interesting.
Thassa's
Oracle, the first 8-pointed card.
I'm comfortable with it. If I don't have to see it ever again, I like it. Like, I know we talked about bringing it down in points, but that's sort of like,
the card is also just stupid.
It's just not fun.
Please don't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, jokes aside, it is not difficult to build your deck in a way that Tainted Pact is literally just instant speed Demonic Tutor. Yeah. And it seems insane to me every single time I cast that card. I go, is this real?
Yeah, it's sort of, whenever somebody, like, I've never cast the card. I don't own a copy of it. But every time it's cast against me, I know it's finding the exact card to destroy me. Like, I think Josh was playing.
Yeah, he had it in Mardu.
Ninja's Josh, not Mardu.
Oh, okay. Ninja's Josh, got it.
He was playing that Sultai deck against me, and I was on Dredge, and he cast that card. He cast his card, Tainted Pact, and I was like, "Oh no! Oh really?
Yeah."
He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get the card."
You only need one thing. What did he get with it?
I believe it was just the first graveyard. I think it was a Scavenging Ooze.
Oh, okay.
Like, he just got it right away.
That's less.
Like, this one.
That's less exciting.
He did have like 5 green mana though, so he cast it and he just like nom 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 nom. And every time I tried to do something, he's just like, "Great, make my Scoos bigger."
Rip.
Rita repulsed me. Make my monster grow.
Oh my god! I love a Power Rangers reference.
Oh yeah, we Rita. We're Zordon.
I'm Zordon. Look at me.
You are Zordon. Yeah, I'm like a Billy. Oh my gosh.
Oh boy. All right.
Or,
thanks.
My Alpha 5.
Thanks. Hey, thanks for listening to Magic Dad's podcast. Yeah. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We got one more part to go on this one. So until then, I just want to remind you that we're proud
of you. Yes, I did get my hair cut.
Bye.
I love you. Kiss, kiss.